Today we're going to talk about the 10% summary adopted through the John Collins writing program. This form has been adapted and tweaked a little bit just to make sure it's cut down to one page and there's 4 distinctive steps, all labeled numerically in the left-hand column and underlined, the last step being a vocabulary section. Now to do this template we need an article because that's what we're going to summarize. So if we go back to an article that we previously annotated, we know that good annotation means if you take everything that's not highlighted or commented on and block it out, you're going to have a great summary. So that's going to be stage 1 of making it easier for the summary itself. Now all we have to do is plug in information. So if we start on step 1, this first part of the 10% summary, we're going to create a topic sentence. And this is as easy as taking the title and putting it in the area where it says title. Then we're going to refer to the article and we're going to take the source. In this case, it's the Washington Post. So we're going to write the whole title where that article came from. We're going to look for the author. This is T. Reese Shapiro that wrote that. So we're going to go ahead and plug in that name. Now sometimes you're going to get into a bind when you're doing a 10% summary. You're going to see that there was no author listed. That's okay. You could just skip that section. This is going to fill out fine without that. The next, we're going to fill in a verb. This is what's going to link our preliminary information with our actual topic sentence. So there's a list that you could choose from. Of course, there's many others that you could put in this place, but you want to just pick one verb that is going to link your sentence together. In this case, I chose discusses. Now, this step 1 is going to read as one whole big sentence. Okay, imagine yourselves putting quotes to the left of where it says in after step 1. So your topic sentence so far reads, in Fairfax County School Board often has millions in extra cash to spend. From the Washington Post, T. Reese Shapiro discusses, and then you need to fill in a quick little summary of the article of what the author is actually discussing. So in this case, I finish it out with the recurring budget surplus a district uses to fund various programs of their choice. Now, because of the internet age, article titles have gotten a little longer and bulkier and more cumbersome. So it's not going to read as smooth as maybe if you just pick up Time magazine and there's a quick 4-word article title, but that's okay. So now we have our step 1 done. This information is filled out. I have all the information I could have possibly gotten just from the top of this article. The Washington Post is my source. I have the title. I have the author. And you don't need the date it's published, but that should always be good to know just from the articles that you're reading. So if you're doing historical research, you're not picking an article that was from 1962 when there's been tons and tons of research after that already happened. Next, we try to break down the length of the article. You'll have a number of main ideas assigned based on how long it is. So for instance, this article is 3 pages, and there's some bulk. It's from the Washington Post, which is a little higher reading level than some of the sources you could possibly look at. So 4 main ideas is top-notch of what you could pick out of this. Sometimes you're going to have a 1-page article that's really short. It may have a low reading level where there's really only one main topic to cover. In that case, you might only pick 1 or 2 main ideas, and that's okay. And that'll be assigned for you, so you won't have to worry about that stress. So you get back into the article about Fairfax County School Board and how they have tons of money left over to spend. What an awful problem that is. And we're going to sift through and we're going to try to get the 4 main ideas of this. And what we're going to do is we're going to draw them out and we're going to list it where it says step 2 of our 10% summary. Now, we can't just be pulling these out of thin air. As good historians, good writers, we need to have some support. So for main idea 1, we're going to have a quote that backs that up. And it's okay if the quote is really long. If it doesn't fit on that line, you could do a couple things. First, you could either go beneath that line and finish the sentence that you need to write, or you could just put a ... to know that it's a truncated quote, and reference the page number where you could find the full quote. So when we go to write this summary out from the template, we'll actually be able to check back in the article and see what the full quote is. We want to make sure that we quote it exactly. Remember, it's a quote. We're not paraphrasing. We need to get it just how it says in the text. So I'm going to go through, I've pulled out my 4 main ideas. I've gotten 4 support, pieces of support. This is data that shows that my main idea is in fact a main idea in the text because it has been supported with a quotation. Good. Step 2 is done. I'm going to go into step 3 right now. And this is where it starts to get a little tricky, is I'm going to write all this out. But guess what? You already have your first sentence of this summary because that's in step 1. You're simply going to write that out exactly as you see it on the paper. You're not going to throw in any extra words and no extra transitions. You already have your one verb there that connects the 2 sides, and that's going to be your smooth start. Where it starts to get tricky is how we incorporate step 2, how we introduce these quotes, and how we close in transition to the next quote. Before we leave this sheet and start our writing, though, I want to focus on vocab, which is section 4. Normally in an article, there's going to be a lot of words that you don't understand, and that's okay. You could jot them down in the 7 spaces provided. Now, if you're super brainiac and there's not 7 words that you don't understand, that's okay. Maybe there's only 1, 2, or 3. Jot those down. But we could go a step further. Maybe you know all the words, but there's some super important words in here that if you don't understand these words, you're not going to understand what the article is talking about. Go ahead and jot down those super important words. You could see on this sheet, I put down deficit, because if you don't know what deficit is, you're going to have trouble understanding what this article is talking about. Compliance, same thing, because there's some discrepancy in the rules that's talked about in here. And then I also put down shepherd, because in the context it's used, a quotation that a person gives in this article to the journalist, shepherd is used in a different way than I'm used to hearing it. So I put that down just as good reference as a spot that might trip some people up. Now, after I've completed the first part of that 10% summary, there's more. Remember, it's a summary. You've done all the work through the annotation, the template. Now we're just piecing it together, and we're dressing it up, so to say. We're making it look nice and professional. So to do this, we have our topic sentence already. Now we're going to incorporate our main ideas and our data. So we're going to transition after our topic sentence, and we're going to go into start to bring support of what the article is actually talking about. So you're pretty much going to start off by stating your main idea number 1. I wrote down that schools use extra money to fund a wish list. Now I think that's pretty good. Then I'm just going to write that as a sentence as is. Now my data, my main idea 1 quote that supports this, on page 1 there was a sentence that said $400,000 was used for BlackBerry smartphones for administrative staff. You could see that I truncated that with a ... but since I wrote the page number where that quote occurred, I was easily able to reference that and get the rest of the quote that otherwise would not have fit on that line. Great, so I have 2 sentences that schools use extra money to fund a wish list, and I have some support. This quote saying what money was used for, and insinuating that the BlackBerry smartphones were part of this wish list. Now what? Well, here comes the all-important third part of this quote sandwich. I say quote sandwich because you've introduced it, you've given the quote, but now you need another piece of bread on that other side. You need to close it off. You need to answer the all-important question, so what? Why does it matter? So let's think of something here. The schools use extra money to fund a wish list. $400,000 is used for BlackBerry smartphones for administrative staff. So you have to think of some type of summary, some type of analysis that you can weave together with that. Now, after you've had that third sentence, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to repeat this process all over again, and we're going to transition, yes, using a transition word such as also or again or to reemphasize or therefore, depending on what the sentence is. We're going to go into the next part where we state main idea number 2, we give a quote, and then we explain the so what and the why does it matter. Now at the end, we're going to have a lovely conclusion. Make sure you look at step 3. Do not start this with in conclusion. It's a very elementary way to start a concluding paragraph or a concluding sentence. We could get more scholarly than that. You could simply state your case in a smooth way without having to say in conclusion. This also goes for in summation, finally. Okay, let's get a little smarter than that. So when that's all done, you have your final product, a simple summary that shows up on your sheet of paper. You should be able to hand it to someone, and it's not quite as long as the original article that you looked at, but it still says all the same major points of information.